Hi, this is Phil Shapiro in Takoma Park, Maryland. I work in the public library here in town, and I help people use the computers. We have a computer center, and when I'm not helping people use computers, I talk to adults or youths who come by my office. And down the hall from my office, there's a food vending machine. The public library won't give change for the vending machine because they're too busy doing other things. So when youth or adults need change, if they have a $5 bill and they need 5 ones, they come to my office and ask me for change, and I usually stop by the bank on the way to work, pick up some dollar bills, and in the process, I get to ask interesting coin questions and other kinds of riddles to the youth or adults who come by my office. They don't get the change unless you answer the riddles. So just last week, 2 4th grade girls come running up to my office and they said, "We're here for you to entertain us." And I said, "Okay, do you need change?" They go, "No, we don't need change. We just want your questions." So that made me feel great. I gave them some interesting questions, and I loved the way they were talked about the answers between themselves, and they were trying to figure things out. It was just a great thing to see. So here's a little presentation I put together in LibreOffice, and I want to show you a couple things here. So when you're working, I mostly work at my job with middle school students. It just happens to be elementary and middle school students are the people who show up at my work, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th graders. But once in a while I get a 1st grader or a 2nd grader who comes by, and then I want to give them an interesting little coin question. And to start off with, I might ask them, I might say, I have 3 coins in my hand, and the 3 coins add up to 12 cents. Can you tell me which coins I've got? And I help them think through it. I ask them, do you think there's any pennies in the answer, and whatever. So that's for those, it's a fairly easy question, but if you've never seen these kinds of questions before, students might take a minute or 2 to figure it out. So after I do that question, I like to ask a question. For example, I might say, I've got 4 coins that makes 52 cents. And that's an interesting question for a 1st grader. It's a little hard, but some of them get it. It's kind of like a little puzzle. And then I might ask them this question. I've got 6 coins that makes 10 cents. So as they're thinking about this question, they have to realize that if you have that many coins, you're going to have a lot of pennies in the answer. And if it's going to add up to 10 cents, you can't have any dimes or quarters in the answer. And so if they do enough thinking, they can come up with the answer that if you have 6 coins in your hand that makes 10 cents, it's 5 pennies and 1 nickel. Over here is a similar kind of question I like to ask. This is slightly harder, where I have 6 coins makes 18 cents. And over here, it's 3 pennies and 3 nickels. So now I like to get into the kinds of questions over here where there might be 2 different answers for the same question. So here we're looking at 5 coins that add up to 45 cents, 1 quarter and 4 nickels. But there's another way of doing it without any quarters. And so that's an interesting question to ask a 3rd or 4th grader, sometimes 2nd grader, sometimes 8th grader, whatever. You say there's 2 different ways where 5 coins add up to 45 cents. So that's an interesting 2 kind of coins question. Then over here, I love this one. We have 8 coins add up to 56 cents, and there's 3 different ways of doing this. I'm not going to explain the other 2 ways. You can try and figure them out yourself. But this is a really good middle school question, and some elementary school students might enjoy it. It's the kind of thing they might need a little coaching or encouragement, but 8 coins adds up to 56 cents. There's 3 different ways of doing it. Sometimes I give this hint. I say there's 1 way with 2 quarters, 1 way with 1 quarter, and 1 way with 0 quarters. So sometimes that's the kind of hint that I would need. If I was a middle school student, I'd need a hint like that to get going. Then over here, I like to show that just because the question doesn't have a large number, like here we have 12 coins add up to 20 cents. So 20 cents is not a big number, but this is a kind of a hard question. There's 2 nickels and 10 dimes. So I like to show this as an interesting question. And by the same token, over here, just because the number is a big number that the coins add up to doesn't mean that the question is a difficult question. So over here, we have 7 coins makes $1.15. It's 4 quarters and 3 nickels. And when you hear that there's 7 coins makes $1.15, somebody, students should be thinking of trying to get 4 quarters, and then it becomes kind of obvious that the last 3 coins are nickels. If you have 4 quarters, if you have a total of 7 that makes $1.15, remove those 4 quarters, and then it becomes a really simple question. Now, for the students who like a difficult question, sometimes I run into these middle school students who really love a big challenge. Here's a question I invented that's a really interesting kind of question. And it sounds more difficult than it is. So I ask them, I say I have 100 coins in my hand that add up to $1.18. Almost every single coin in my hand is a penny. Can you tell me what coins are not pennies and how many of that coin? I also explain to the students that there's only one other kind of coin besides the pennies, so that it's not a complicated question. It's not like 1 nickel and 2 dimes and a quarter. So it's 100 coins that's up to $1.18. And then I give them an example sometimes just to get them started. I say, for example, if there's 99 pennies and 1 quarter, that would add up to $1.24. And that's too much for $1.18. And so I think there's maybe no quarters in the answer. And that sets them on the path towards figuring out if there's nickels in the answer or if they're dimes, and how many nickels and how many dimes. Now, my overall goal as a library worker is not to teach mathematics to students, but to get them interested and enthusiastic about the process of thinking. So these 4th grade girls who ran up to my office yesterday, it was yesterday or the day before, they really love to think. And for a teacher who's explaining things in a classroom, having students who love to think, that's a big step forward. And if you have half of the class who loves to think, that makes the teacher job easier, and the educational attainment for the class is higher. And if you have 3/4 of the class who love to think, then lots more can be done in that classroom. So I see my role at the public library as helping children develop a love of thinking. And then they can transfer that love of thinking to whatever endeavors they're going to pursue, either in school or outside of school. But that the love of thinking is one of the things that they got at their public library. This is Phil Shapiro.